Remakes have always been an interesting topic to handle when talking about a video game. When it comes to what changes were made, what weren't made, should there be changes? Is the initial artistic direction held up? Is the original game better or worse? Does it even count as a remake? Is it worth the secondary journey through a game you might have already played? Should you just play the remake, or should you jump from one to another? But above all else, should you buy it? And for this video, that is the $50 question of the day, that is, should you buy Crisis Core Reunion? A little history lesson about myself first. I actually played the original on PSP and I loved it. So much in fact that my PSP died, taking with it my Dissidia Duodecim save file with over 120 hours on it, and I will never forgive you. I'm just kidding, I love that thing. And if you play the original today, you might be surprised to see how well it holds up, especially since it was made for a 272p screen, or about this big. And before I get too sidetracked, let's start with the second biggest question. Is this a remake? I asked this mostly because a lot of Square Enix's advertisement for this game was titled More Than a Remaster, trying to state all the differences and changes they make between the original and now Reunion. And I'm going to break some of those down for you. The graphics and models and textures and all that other things have been replaced with a much higher definition version, but is based entirely off of the skeleton of the first game, with no big additions or changes. And given what they made with 7 Remake, i.e. flesh out the world more, slowed the pacing down a lot, and completely changed the combat system, weapons, and the plot, I am comfortable in calling Reunion a remaster. Simple as that. Now, that's not all doom and gloom, because they did add a handful of quality of life changes. I'll go in depth in that later, trust me. But by far the biggest change they made is the voice actor of Zack himself. I have seen it floating around online that the change was made to be more consistent with the voice they gave him in Remake. And the new actor doesn't do a bad job or anything, it's just there's a certain degree of soul in the old voice lines that are missing in Reunion.
Zack speaking.
Making progress, Zack?
Angeal, what's going on? Why are we fighting Shinra troops?
They're Wu-Tai troops in disguise. Now, head to the open area above.
You mean towards Sector 8?
Yes. But first, you're gonna have to clear a path.
Clear a path?
Zack speaking.
Making progress, Zack?
What's going on, Angeal? Why are we fighting Shinra troops?
They're Wu-Tai troops in disguise. Now, head to the open area above.
Towards Sector 8.
Yes, but first you have to clear a path.
Clear a path?
It also doesn't help that people say he sounds Sonic inspired, and I can never unsee that for the rest of my life now. Thankfully, I beat it before I heard that. Now on to the quality of life improvements. There is a bunch. Tutorials are much more useful, including confirming that experience is a thing. You can now choose when you use a limit break you were given in that battle. The DMW has been sped up so it doesn't take all day. You can see the timer on buffs. Big giant enemy attacks can be weakened or nullified. You can see how many chests there are in a mission. And you can see what rewards the missions give you beforehand. Missions are now graded on a difficulty scale of 1 to 10, not just giving you a grade. Controls have been tweaked, which means you actually feel like you're playing the game instead of just putting in commands. Items are now color-coded to what stat they help, so you just need to glance instead of reading one by one. Attacks now have just the right amount of screen shake to feel satisfying. The PC port has native DualShock support. There is now a sprint button. The menu noise isn't a jump scare anymore. Outside of battle, there's a button you can just push and it uses potions to heal you to full. You can now see the timer to flee in battle. There's a reusable Phoenix down in the Shinra building. The sniping section controls like an actual video game this time. And they put in a system for the Buster Sword that gets innate break damage limit, among other things like being able to hit through barriers. And these are all great improvements, but they're mostly small things. At the foundation of this game is still a portable game, and a lot of criticisms of the original are still here, where the story could absolutely be blitzed through, so if you're completing the game, like I did, then a lot of time is going to be spent doing these missions, which are meant to be bite-sized and done here and there over a long time, not blasted through. Don't do that. It's not fun. And the Minerva fight, the sole proper super boss of this game, still sucks. Yes, I cheesed it because I am a man of zero shame. There's also a weird note about this game. considering that this is before Rebirth comes out, which is an important plot point, so the game kind of feels like an advertisement for Rebirth, which definitely feels like a first for me. So should you buy this? It's a tougher question than I wish it was. If you're like me, who played it back in the day, and you want to revisit a newer, touched-up version of a game you love so dearly, then you probably already bought it. On the other hand, are you okay with spending $50 on a cleaner version of a game where Rebirth is figuratively around the corner, and given what they did with 7 Remake, is probably going to look, play, and sound much more fantastic? It isn't the cleanest sell either way. I feel if I had a mod where they put in the old voice lines, we would have a much simpler discussion, in my opinion. There's still so much here to love, like the story about a hero who, let's be honest, got a raw deal, and until Cloud remembers that, he goes almost entirely unhurt. The core combat, which is simple and robust, if not a little frustrating, like sometimes I would go to use the Buster Sword's special attack, and I would just stare at the enemies instead. Oh, hey, how's the wife? I've had better. Or these worms that inflict stop on you no matter what equipment or status immunities you might have. The soundtrack is amazing and is still to this day one of my favorite OSTs in video games. And this game has one of the most unique Sephiroth boss fights. Well, ignoring Remake. I don't know. The consumer within me is telling me to tell you, another consumer, that unless you've never played this game before, maybe wait for this game to go on sale. So, thanks for watching, subscribe, and RSVP for my PSP's belated funeral pyre.